Who makes the best stainless steel integrated bracelet sports watch on the market? Audemars Piguet, Patek Philippe, or Vacheron Constantin? This is a legendary debate, but today we're going to finally settle the score. The year is 1969 and Seiko has just released the world's first quartz timepiece, which completely set the Swiss watchmaking industry on fire. As luxury brands like Audemars Piguet, Patek Philippe, and Vacheron Constantin scramble to reposition themselves to suit a new and ever-changing luxury watch market. And the result came in 1972 when Audemars Piguet designed the Royal Oak, a completely groundbreaking timepiece fashioned from stainless steel with an integrated bracelet and octagonal bezel designed by legendary watch designer Gerald Genta. This watch was retailing for substantially more than many precious metal timepieces from the era, and yet it was fashioned from stainless steel. The assertion from Audemars Piguet was quite clear. What you could do is take something made of stainless steel and turn it into something luxurious. And so what Audemars Piguet was trying to signal to the rest of the market was that they were here to stay and that they were committed to adapting in order to suit the new market dynamics. So 1972 is the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. Patek Philippe follows in 1976 with the release of the Nautilus, designed by the same visionary as the Royal Oak, Gerald Genta. And this model immediately took the industry by storm. And alongside the Royal Oak, the Nautilus is undoubtedly the most significant integrated bracelet watch on the market. Vacheron Constantin didn't want to get left out from this trend, and in 1977, they released the 222. The 222 had a much softer release and a much softer reception, and after a little while, they actually discontinued the 222 and replaced it with the Overseas in 1996. We've since seen the 222 come back in recent years in the Historiques collection, but the Overseas is undoubtedly the flagship of Vacheron Constantin's integrated bracelet sports watch market. So the question is, which of these three models is truly the best? And we're going to go through each of them and talk about the defining design elements. We're going to talk a little bit about the evolution of some of these models. And then at the end, I'm going to give my personal opinion about what I like about each of these and which one I personally would choose, and you'll let me know how wrong I am in the comments. Starting with Audemars Piguet's Royal Oak. The Royal Oak, in many respects, has the advantage of being the very first model, and that means that it had the wow factor of being something completely novel in an industry that was accustomed to slim, complicated dress watches from high horology brands. The Royal Oak had this integrated bracelet design, which essentially had a seamless flow from the bracelet straight into the main case. It utilized these incredibly unique industrial design elements, from exposed screws on the bezel to these incredibly robust looking links on the bracelet that have these vertical portions and then main horizontal singular links. It's a watch that looks unlike truly anything else. And then you had a sort of bathtub handset and applied numerals that have this rounded profile to them. It's very industrial. It's very 1970s, 1980s. And yet, when you look at the details, the execution, everything is incredibly luxurious. You have the polished bezel, has this sort of strong contrast between the high polish elements on the sides and then this vertical brushing on the top surface of the bezel. It's very striking. This watch shouts on the wrist in some respects because it looks like nothing else on the market. You immediately can recognize the design elements that go into this watch, and that's why it became so successful, because from across the room you could say that's an Audemars Piguet. That's a very powerful thing in this industry. The same is true of the Nautilus. Many say that the idea behind this design was that if you took a Royal Oak and put it in the ocean and had the water sort of weather the watch over many years, you'd arrive at a Nautilus. You soften out these curves. Whereas the Audemars Piguet is incredibly angular, the Patek Philippe Nautilus is much more smooth. It was designed specifically to call to mind a sort of nautical theme, as its name suggests. That's why you have on the dial this sort of engraved teak deck on a yacht aesthetic, which Patek Philippe continues to use to this day, which I think is an interesting contrast to Audemars Piguet's tapisserie dial, which is sort of these raised squares with a brushing surface on them. Both have a sort of unique visual intrigue on the dial, which I think was one of the themes that Genta wanted to emphasize. But again, we have this sort of contrast between high polished bezel and a brushed bezel surface. You have, again, once more, the same concept of contrast carrying down the bracelet, where you have brushing along the sides and then polished center links. It's a very, very unique look. Some people don't like it, some people love it, and there's no doubt that the Nautilus has become sort of a legend for Patek Philippe as they've built up entire collections around the Nautilus, and it's become an incredibly popular model in the modern market. As we move along to the Vacheron Constantin Overseas, the Overseas has gone through a number of iterations throughout its lifetime. We have an earlier piece here. They came in smaller case diameters. We had 37mm, 35mm, 32mm iterations throughout its sort of evolution in earlier years. This watch had a little bit of a struggle in terms of the bracelet. People didn't like the bracelet on these early models quite as much. They've now become somewhat popular, and the collector enthusiasm in these older models has surged as the modern Vacheron Constantin Overseas has sort of taken the industry by storm. You have an exciting array of dials that they outfitted these pieces with, and what made the Overseas so unique was its play on the Maltese cross logo that Vacheron Constantin is known for. And so you see the Maltese cross design sort of incorporated into the bezel and then into the bracelet on the modern iteration, which we'll look at in one moment. This watch really took off after the launch of the larger contemporary Vacheron Constantin Overseas. We see now the Maltese cross motif continue into the bracelet. And I think this bracelet is incredibly striking because what you also have is this sort of internal polished section, and yet the main surfaces are brushed. It's very, very sophisticated, very hard to execute, showcases Vacheron Constantin's mastery of handwork and finishing. I think that it's one of the coolest bracelets on the market, there's no doubt, and I think it really ties the design language of this watch together more cohesively than we had on the previous version from that Vacheron originally had released. And so I think that the design of this watch was truly groundbreaking. Another exciting detail that Vacheron has is a quick release on the bracelet that allows you to swap out this bracelet without any tools, and you can place this watch on straps, and they've made a variety of different straps that are compatible with this watch. And I think that that's quite welcome because it allows you to take one watch and create a much more versatile timepiece. And one of the struggles that you might have with an integrated bracelet watch is that the bracelet becomes such a strong part of the design, and also it's so integrated, as its name suggests, into the case head that you might not be able to easily wear straps with the watch as well. But what Vacheron decided to do was sort of confront that problem head on and create a really easy switch process to put specialized straps on this watch. I think that they get massive props for that. So the question is, which is the best watch? And I think that each of these has its own sort of strengths, and so I'm going to talk about what I like about each of them and what I don't like. So starting with the AP, I think that the AP has the best design, which is a very bold comment, and a lot of people are going to disagree with me on that. But I think that this watch, number one, it was the very first watch to sort of pioneer this aesthetic, which I think has to give it some extra points over the others, because when you're the visionary that pushes for something before the market's really ready for it, I think that that gives you a sort of degree of, extra kudos over other brands that were able to sort of ride the positive reception that this watch later received. What I think works so well on this watch is the recognizability of the model, and also the fact that this design sort of perfectly incorporates the bracelet into the case, perhaps better than any of these other models. And I think that from a design standpoint, the octagonal bezel is the most attention-grabbing of any of these, and it's the most unique. It was the most geometric of the other models, and I think whereas Patek sort of softened the aesthetic of the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, the Royal Oak is the aesthetic that leads to the Nautilus. And so when you look at the Nautilus, you can say, okay, this is a softened Royal Oak. In some respects, that means that the Patek Philippe Nautilus lives somewhat in the shadow from a design standpoint of the Royal Oak. You may disagree with me. Personally, I think that the Royal Oak is the more striking design. From a movement perspective, however, I think that the Royal Oak definitely plays second fiddle to Patek Philippe, and I mean this in a variety of different ways. Firstly, the quickset date on the Royal Oak came so much later that I think the rest of the industry had moved on to easily setting date mechanisms far before Audemars Piguet ever got there. But even on a visual standpoint, I think that the Royal Oak always has this sort of central winding rotor aesthetic, usually takes up a smaller portion of the case back. I think the movement seems to me to be a bit of an afterthought, whereas on Patek Philippe's Nautilus, they've got a variety of different movement calibers within the entire collections. And what you find are, in some cases, some of the models have micro-rotor movements like the 240, much more elevated finishing. I think you get a lot more on the Nautilus from a movement standpoint than you got on the Royal Oak. So while I definitely feel that the Royal Oak's design language wins, you have to keep in mind that these watches are also high horology pieces, and so I think you should be scrutinizing, and collectors should scrutinize the movements with the same type of particularity that we sort of examine the designs. And for me, that's where I think Patek Philippe sort of stands on its own. The other thing that I'm going to give that I think sort of distinguishes this Nautilus is that it is incredibly thin. They wear so compactly and slim on the wrist, and I think that that is something that they definitely beat the Royal Oak and the Overseas on. With respect to the Overseas, my biggest problem with the Overseas is undoubtedly the size. I think that these large modern models do not wear so compactly on the wrist. And I think next to the Royal Oak and next to the Nautilus, both of those models manage to wear compactly even in their jumbo configurations, especially the Nautilus. I think people, even with smaller wrist sizes, are able to wear a 5711. And for an Overseas, I think you really have to have the wrist to stomach this design. And part of the reason that this is the case is that the bracelet itself protrudes so prominently. And while I think the design is quite well-intentioned, and I think that they've done a wonderful job of sort of paying homage to their logo, I don't think that the Overseas reaches the same degree of success that the Nautilus and the Royal Oak do from a design standpoint, nor from a wearability standpoint. That said, this watch definitely looks different and distinct from the other two, and I think that that's something that definitely deserves some extra praise. So the movement finishing is quite beautiful on the Overseas. I think they've done a lovely job. They have this sort of navigator style aesthetic engraved on the case back, and there have been a variety of Overseas models with more complications incorporated that I think do a lovely job of working within this design ethos to add complications and build out a full collection of wonderful timepieces. So my personal pick, if I could only have one, would definitely be a mid-size Nautilus, because I think that they're the most wearable and they capture the design that the Royal Oak and the Nautilus master, in my opinion, to the best degree. If you have a larger wrist, you might find yourself gravitating more to a Vacheron Constantin or an Audemars Piguet. I just find personally, for my current taste and preferences, these mid-sized Nautiluses hit a perfect sweet spot of being slightly more affordable than the jumbo models, more wearable, and also so thin on the wrist, which I think is something that cannot be underestimated as an important factor when you're looking at a sports watch that you want to wear on a daily basis. So those are my takes on these pieces, but I'd like to know in the comments below which of these models is your personal favorite. What would you be wearing if you could only wear one integrated bracelet sports watch? Who do you think does the best design? Is it Audemars Piguet? Is it Patek? Is it Vacheron? Do you disagree with me on the movements? Let us know in the comments below, and I'm excited to watch the debate ensue. We'll see you next time.